I am an actuary.
I am an actuary.
I am an actuary.
Welcome to the We Are Actuaries podcast, where you'll meet leaders who use their actuarial powers to solve a range of problems and make a real difference. I am your host, Julia Lessing, and I'm a qualified actuary based in Australia. I help actuaries develop communication and leadership skills to build great actuarial careers. So settle in, learn from the best, and be inspired. Today we're talking about how do we describe what we do as actuaries. Family and friends have probably asked you, what do you do? And maybe colleagues or prospective business partners have asked, what do actuaries do? But how do you answer that question? Do you have a clear answer, or do you fumble through a response? Joining us for this discussion is experienced actuary, motor pricing manager and author Catrin Townsend. Catrin says that having a clear definition of what you do can help increase your value and recognition at work, and it can also bring numerous personal benefits like greater motivation and meaning to your work. Today, she'll share her tips with you about how to describe what you do as an actuary. Catrin, welcome to the show.
Hi, Julia. Thank you for having me.
So, Catrin, you and I first met, I think, on LinkedIn back in 2022, shortly after you'd published your book called A Risky Business, An Actuary's Guide to Quantifying and Managing Risk in Society. Yes. And then we've recently reconnected as I've published my book too, Aspiring Actuarial Leaders, the Modern Managers Toolkit. And even though we're on opposite sides of the world, I'm here in Australia and you're in the UK, but we've bonded over our common experience as actuaries and as authors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually read your book a couple of weeks ago and I loved it. It was super practical and highly recommend if anyone is watching this who hasn't read it, like get on that now.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And yours has done so well. Yours has been out for a couple of years now and available in lots of different places as well. So we'll link to that in the show notes too. But Catrin, compared to being an actuary, don't you think that being an author is so much easier to explain to people?
Definitely. Yeah. When you say you're an author, everyone immediately gets it. I mean, most people think you've written a fiction book.
That's true.
So I think a lot of people are disappointed that I haven't written, some kind of fan fiction about like pirates or something. I don't know. But when you say you're an actuary, everyone suddenly wants to talk about your book again.
About your book.
Being an actuary is quite unknown as a profession. There's no actuary Barbie. It's not something that kids grow up knowing, that's something I could do, or I know what that does. And I think most adults don't really know what actuaries do either. And I think that means that the profession has a real kind of image problem, but it also means that your role day to day in a business can be very different. Like the actuarial profession is so diverse, and I cover that in my book. I literally have 19 chapters, and each of them covers a different thing that actuaries can do. And so because of that diversity as well, even if someone knows what an actuary does, they might not know what you as an actuary do. And I think that's the other difficulty we have.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So without a tangible output like authors have in a book, we don't really have the same kind of tangible outputs that you can point to and say, we're actuaries, this is what we do. And we do so many different things. So I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you and hearing how you describe what you do, and also helping other actuaries describe what they do too. But before we get into that, I want to ask you the question I ask all of my guests, Catrin, and it's this. How do you use your actuarial superpowers to make a difference in the world?
I think my actuarial superpower is synthesizing data and quantitative analysis and turning that into something that's really actionable and something also that non-technical people can understand. And so hopefully that means that my stakeholders in the business can make informed data-led decisions. But I also hope that people start getting excited about insurance pricing, get excited about actuarial science, and also get excited about the benefits that a strong pricing team can bring. And that's definitely something I want to focus on in the future.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. So you've talked a little bit about, what you do and the specific niche of actuarial work that you're in. Why do you think, more broadly, why is it important to be able to describe what we do as actuaries?
Yeah. Well, we've all had that, you already said, we've all had that awkward moment, haven't we, when you're at a party and someone turns to you and says, "What do you do?" You desperately wish you were a dentist or something at that point, don't you? But I think all actuaries hate that question. Because you might say I'm an actuary and then people are either confused or they're immediately bored. And I once had a very confusing conversation where I said I was an actuary and they said, "Oh, have I seen you in anything?" And it took me a moment to realise that they had thought I was an actress. And so I replied it was very unlikely, made a mental note never to say I was an actuary at a party ever again.
Right.
But aside from those awkward small talk moments, the low recognition of the actuarial profession means that it's really hard, or certainly a lot harder than it needs to be, to get amazing people into the profession because they just don't know it's an option for them. And I know for me, myself, in high school, I loved maths. I loved problem solving and practical maths in particular. And I had never even heard of being an actuary. It had never crossed my mind. So I very, very almost wasn't an actuary. I almost went for like quantum physics or something, although I should definitely not be there anywhere near a Bunsen burner. So probably a good thing. But defining your work is also really important within your work circle. So even for people who do know what actuaries do, like, your boss or maybe even your boss's boss might say, "Oh, what are you working on right now?" And having a clear, concise answer to that is really going to increase their recognition of your work and therefore increase their recognition of the value that you add to the business. And I think there are other benefits too. If you're able to clearly define your core mission, then it makes it so much easier to prioritize your tasks. So just super practical. But, for every activity in the morning, you come in, you've got a massive to-do list. You could just look through those lists and say, does it actually help me achieve this mission statement, what I say I do all day? Because if it only tangentially aligns, then maybe it can be delegated or delayed or even dropped. Fingers crossed. Yeah, dropped. Love dropped. Because then it leaves you to focus on the truly value add work that only you can do, or because you have your special skills to do. And I find for me personally as well that having a mission statement, we're going to call it that, it's a really great source of motivation. Because you might have several people in your team at work who all do the same thing as you, or they all do a variation on the theme. Maybe one of you does it for home and one of you does it for motor, or maybe you're all a team of reserving actuaries, and why are you there? Why are you there? What is your superpower, to use your word, Julia? What special thing do you bring that enhances the business? So I think defining your work can really bring that recognition. It can bring focus. It can bring a bit of meaning.
Yeah.
And who doesn't want that?
Absolutely. I mean, listening to you describing why this is important, it's not just about having an answer at a barbecue. It's not about just having an answer when someone says, "What do you do?" There's actually a whole lot of benefits to having a great answer, ranging from, as you've described, getting recognition at work, being able to make sure that other people know what you do, not just I'm an actuary, but what value do I add to the business? And then from a personal perspective as well, being able to use that to help prioritize your work. And let's so many of us are just feeling completely overwhelmed with our to-do lists in 2025. So having a way to kind of triage that to-do list and to be able to decide what's important, that's really powerful. And then the idea of motivation and meaning, I love that too. I think those are such important benefits of being able to describe what we do, and maybe not ones that we've really thought about. So we've talked about why it's important to be able to describe what you do as an actuary, but how do you do that, Catrin?
Hi, I'm Bill Morella, CEO of Actex Learning, and I'm excited to introduce our latest publication, Aspiring Actuarial Leaders, The Modern Manager's Toolkit by Julia Lessing, a qualified actuary and executive coach with over 20 years of experience. This book is packed with practical strategies, real-world insights, and expert guidance to help you navigate the challenges of modern management. Whether you're a new manager or aiming for executive leadership, this resource will equip you with the skills to thrive. Get your copy today at actexlearning.com and take the next step in your actuarial career.
I would summarize my job and say I create and deliver statistically strong motor risk models that meet stakeholder needs. So let's break that down word by word and talk about what that means. So I create. So that means I'm not like a short order cook and I'm just coding up the models that the trading team prescribe. I'm actively decision making. I'm creating new features and models. There is a creative process to this, Yes. I deliver. So there's an element of project management of the deployment of those pricing models. But also what I create has to be actionable and it has to deliver business value. And I actually think that this is one of the places where actuaries are very different to data scientists sometimes. Data scientists can sometimes create a really great solution. Great, gold star, you got the best solution, but actually it's really not implementable because of regulatory concerns or because the stakeholders are not going to go for that. So what you need to create something really actionable and deliver that business value, and pragmatism, right, is a real strength you need. You can't spend an extra 4 weeks on a model if it's only going to give you a tiny bit of benefit. You just got to get it out there in the wild. You got to deliver.
Yeah.
Yes, we have to deliver. So that's I create and deliver. And what am I creating and delivering? I'm creating and delivering statistically strong models, risk models. So I need to stay up to date on new statistical methods and their weaknesses. So there's always that continuous development there. But also, this actually really suits my academic background. I've got a master's in statistical modeling. And so this is one of those places where I can say, this is really well suited to this. And this is the value I bring. I bring that really kind of academic rigor, statistical view to the models. And I'm focused on motor as well. So I need some level of product knowledge related to cars and their risk levels. So I'm going to need to regularly invest some time in keeping those skills up to date.
Yeah.
Which means that it's not a waste of my time to spend half an hour reading a car magazine every month. That's actually really valuable, and I highly recommend that. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because with my new hat as head of lifelong learning here at the Actuaries Institute, I'm really very conscious about how do we make our decisions around ongoing CPD, lifelong learning. What do we need to do to stay up to date and relevant as actuaries? But, what you've talked about just now, reading car magazines as a motor pricing manager makes total sense. And so by being really clear about what you do, that also helps inform your lifelong learning and CPD program. What's going to be best suited to you to keep your knowledge and skills up to date. That's really interesting.
Yeah. And it's not just about kind of me and my team either. The models that we create have to be able to meet the needs of my stakeholders.
Right.
So even if you have the best ever statistical model, the best ever, it's not gonna cut the mustard if it doesn't work for the stakeholders, if it doesn't actually deliver business value. For me, my stakeholders are the optimization pricing team and the trading team in particular, the underwriting team. So I can't hide away in a darkened room cranking out complex models. I know that's probably, some people are thinking, I thought that's what actuaries do. No, but we can't do that.
No.
I have to be collaborative. I have to be people orientated. I have to spend the time investing in that relationship with my stakeholders so I know what they want. Because if I don't know what they want, then how am I going to meet their needs?
Yeah.
So that's what I do. And of course, I don't do all of these things all of the time. I might have days or weeks when I'm not modeling, for example. I might not be modeling. I might be much more focused on data preparation or deployment. But at the core, this is still what I do.
Yeah. And
I think also it helps us to be kind to ourselves. If you have an afternoon where you're just not, you're overwhelmed, you're not getting anywhere, and you think, I'm being so productive. What am I doing? I think it really helps to take that. I think everyone has those days.
Yeah.
And actually just to be able to embrace that and say, but over this past month, this is what I do. And all of this, whether it's going for coffee with a stakeholder or spending time in those meetings, reading a car magazine, helping my team understand how we do modeling.
Yeah.
It really helps me to say, actually, it's not wasted time. It's a really good investment of what I do. And I think by listing it out like this as well, I mean, hopefully already you can see that I have some of the skills that I need to do my job, and some of those attributes to be successful. And that's why I'm doing this role, and this is what I'm adding.
So there's benefits to you personally because it helps you work out what you're doing, and it also helps inform your lifelong learning. It helps you stay relevant for the business as well. And also, I think what's really interesting about your mission statement, if that's how you describe it, I create and deliver statistically strong motor risk models that meet stakeholder needs. That encapsulates what you do without using the word actuary. And I think that's really powerful because sometimes when we say I'm an actuary, we get those sort of blank looks. But when you break it down and are specific about what that means and what that looks like and who you're doing that for, that makes it much more accessible as an explanation to a lot of people.
And the follow-up question that you get then is, oh, wow, what does that model look like? And that's a great question because a model looks very different depending on what job you do. An engineer might have a model that's made of little matchsticks or whatever. Maybe if you work in a fashion or something, a model is something very different. But I think it's one of those things that really opens up the conversation. What does that look like? Help me visualize your day. What do you do when you say build a model? And it just opens up a lot of conversations instead of making people go, how do you even make that a verb? How do you even actuary?
Yeah, so far outside my world, I can't even start to imagine. I guess, and back to our author analogy, it's a bit like saying I'm an author, and then they might say, oh, what's your book about? So it's sort of, gives you that sort of open for more questions and more discussion without just sort of going, oh, you're an actuary, all right, I'll go and talk to the next person because I don't know what that is. Yeah. Okay, that's really interesting. So that's how you describe what you do. For our listeners, I'd love for them to have a bit of a process around working out and formulating a similar sort of mission statement for themselves. So can you take us through the process that would help other actuaries describe what they do?
I would start by looking at your calendar. just at a glance, how are you spending your time? Just past 2 weeks as an example, is fine. So you look at your calendar and you think, I spent about a third of my time in stakeholder meetings. And I actually love color coding my calendar for this reason. So I've got one color for stakeholder meetings in my calendar, for example. So it's really easy at a glance to see this. And I spend some time doing data checks, reviewing the models that my team make, motor risk models. I spend some time preparing for an upcoming deployment, speaking to the different various teams, making sure they know what they're doing. And of course, I spend a good few hours a week in team one-to-ones, team meetings, upskilling the people in my team so the models that they build are better as well. So have you got a list of activities that you do? I mean, we could use you as an example. So once you've got your list of activities, I will try and join those together to just one or two main themes. So I looked at my activities and I thought my two themes are probably statistical models and stakeholders. So almost everything I do falls into one of those two categories. So let's start with something like I build statistical models for stakeholders. That seems reasonable.
Yeah, that's what you're doing. That's what your calendar's saying.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah,
absolutely. Right. So let's keep it simple. So I build statistical models for my stakeholders. Okay. Then I'd like to iterate that by being a little bit silly and going to extremes and saying, okay, so if I built exactly the model that the underwriter wanted, is that a good outcome? Well, probably. But what if the model that the underwriter wanted is so overfit that, you put it on your data and it's absolutely shot? Is that a good outcome? No, of course not. I want to build statistically strong risk models. Okay. Am I responsible for keeping up with trends in the commercial property insurance market? Well, no, because I build motor models. So I probably should add something about motor into my mission statement. And you can do this a few times to try and think really what are your parameters? What are the actual deliverables that you need? But you can be a bit more specific with that. And another prompt I like is, ask yourself, if I didn't do this task, so look in your calendar and you think, I don't know quite where that task fits. Is that, superfluous to my job? And you think, well, if I didn't do it, how does that affect the business? So if I didn't do the deployment preparation, well, the models might be great statistically strong risk models that everyone loves, stakeholders want, but if they're sitting on my desktop, they're not worth a damn penny, So, and then you start to see how important your contribution is.
Yeah. And I guess helps you narrow down those activities or those things that find their way into your calendar about, is this in line with my objective? Is this in line with what I do? Is this valuable, or should I maybe think about dropping it? Yeah.
I think we've all got tasks like that, haven't we?
Oh, absolutely. And I tend to collect a lot of extra tasks because I find a lot of different things interesting. But I have also found having a mission statement has been really helpful. And that's evolved over time too. I think that's the thing, like what we do in our roles won't always be the same throughout our careers for most of us. And so I think also that sort of periodic review of what you're doing, that can also help just to make sure that mission statement stays up to date. So when I first started Guardian Actuarial, I was doing a lot of actuarial consulting work in the government space, health and human services space. So my mission statement at that point was I helped senior leaders use their data to solve complex people-oriented problems, and there were problems around workforce or around the communities that they were serving. And so reminding myself, like you have with your stakeholders, who was I serving and what was I doing how was I helping them? That was helpful to keep me on track. But that's kind of evolved now that I'm in the leadership and coaching space. And I'd say my mission statement is I help actuaries build communication and leadership skills to have great actuarial careers. So again, it's sort of, who am I helping? And that helps me refine, okay, well, if a request comes into my calendar and you're not kind of, that's not necessarily directly aligned with my mission or my objective, then I maybe need to give that some extra thought about whether I've got space for that. Helps me stay focused as well.
Yeah. And I think that, once you've got it, write it on a Post-it note or the front of your notebook.
Yeah.
Or somewhere where you're going to see it often. And use it to prioritize those tasks. This request comes in and they want you to do some kind of workshop around communication that is not related to careers for some reason.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't do that. Or use it, like you said, on those days when you're feeling so overwhelmed and you need motivation that day and you're thinking, this is why am I doing this? Or just to remind yourself that what you do makes a difference. Because like you say, like actuarial is not like writing a book. When I was writing my book, I would give myself a word count. I was like, today I need to do 2,000 words. I need to do that, And so by the end of the day, it was very clear to me that I had made a difference because there were words on a page that was previously blank. But with actuarial, you're quantifying risk. And risk is intangible, invisible, So reminding yourself that what you do makes a difference is important. And also reminding yourself that you bring a valuable contribution because we can all be quite hard on ourselves too, I think, as actuaries.
I think we can. And without that tangible output, as you say, it can be difficult to know when we're finished and when we've done our job and when we've gotten there, I guess. So, yeah. Okay. Now that's really, really useful. Okay. So thank you for sharing why it's important to be able to describe what you do and how you personally describe what you do, and then a bit of a process around looking at our activities and, going through that refinement and honing process to be able to get really clear about what it is that we do and have that mission statement that we write on a Post-it note or we put it on a notebook, we put it somewhere where we can see to help remind us on a day-to-day basis to stay motivated and focused and reminding us of our valuable contribution. That's so useful. So, Catrin, I'd like to finish our interview with one question, and it's this. What's one tip you'd have for actuaries wanting to better describe what they do?
I would say do the process we just described, but start with what you currently do.
Right.
So it might be that you write a mission on paper and it doesn't look like how you want it to look like. Maybe it's got too much BAU work in it, or maybe it's not people focused enough, or maybe it just doesn't really fit the job that you wanted to do when you took this job. I've seen that happen before. But once you've got your mission statement for what you currently do, you can always look to shape your role. Once you've got a good grasp of your current job, once you're aware of the bits that you really don't like in your current job, you can look to shape it, and you can use your mission statement as a prompt to start the conversations, maybe with your boss or your boss's boss, or just to help yourself, refocus on your own goals. And to use this as a tool for yourself and your progression and your development. But never dread answering those "what do you do?" questions ever again.
Fantastic. So much great food for thought and some practical tips for our listeners today. Catrin, thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed this conversation and I look forward to having future conversations about what we do as actuaries. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much, Julia. Bye-bye.
So there you have it. Real life stories and practical tips from a leader using their actuarial superpowers to make a difference in the world. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to get in touch, subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your network. You'll find details from today's interview in the show notes below and on our website www.guardianactuarial.com.au. Until next time.